Black Saturday changed my life. Simple. And I'm sure, obviously, I'm not alone. But how it changed it, and why, and how long it took, are a constant source of amazement for me. Because although I knew I had changed overnight, changing my life took a little bit longer. See, I'd been working as a freelance designer, working on short deadlines, not really enjoying what I was doing, but blimey, it paid well. So on Black Saturday, excuse me, I was sitting alone in the gallery I'd just opened in Healesville, called 3 Stories, designing a brochure for someone I'd never met to meet a deadline that was basically totally made up. And I was doing all this while my house was burning down. I wasn't with my husband, and I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't with my husband, who was frantically putting whatever he could fit in the car, and I wasn't with my daughter as she pulled on her pink cowboy shoes, ready to leave with her dad. I couldn't get to them after he rang me and told me to evacuate. I had no idea of what, in some ways, would end up as the luckiest day of my life. Of course, we all have a Black Saturday story, but the most important thing is that luckily, the 3 of us survived. For me, at the time, what was extraordinary was what happened the next day. As Billy and I were wandering aimlessly around our burnt out property, we started seeing glimpses of things we recognised. Colours, textures, melted objects. We began pulling incredibly unique artefacts out of the ashes. They were virtually unrecognisable, but to Billy and me, they were glimpses of our past lives. They were my grandma's crystal cabinet, with everything in it, only melted. They were the piano that my great auntie had left me in her will, minus the wood. My other grandma's Rolex watch that I'd never worn because, of course, it was a Rolex watch, it's too good to wear. We realised that instead of seeing the total devastation of our house, suddenly we were seeing a natural transformation of the things that we had deep connections to. The idea seemed to strike Billy and I at exactly the same time. We decided then and there we needed to share the change in emotion that we'd experienced by having an exhibition of these totally mangled but entirely magical creations. But even more important than that, we needed to share the idea quickly so others could go back to their homes, find something in anything that they thought they might want to keep before GrowCon came and took their memories away in the back of the truck. So 6 weeks after Black Saturday, we opened the exhibition, Resurrected. We called it an exhibition by and for people affected by the fires. And it was an amazingly positive experience, and organising it gave me somewhere to place all that post-traumatic stress adrenaline. We opened to the sound of a shakuhachi flute that had been reconstructed after it had been burnt in the fires. We were surrounded by people who were part of the exhibition and part of our community. We opened during Earth Hour in total darkness, except for a few candles. This was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had, and it's one I'll never forget. Apart from getting people to go back to their burnout homes to contribute to the exhibition, this also gave people from outside the area a reason to visit and to experience the devastation by not only looking at burnt objects, but also talking to people who had experienced some sort of loss through the fires. It became a place of healing for many people who came through. There were lots of tears and lots of hugs, and so many stories. We had inadvertently provided a safe place for people to share their stories. And I guess in a way I was lucky that I was in a traumatised state, because there's no way I would have gotten together an exhibition anything like this in 6 weeks, nor would I have even attempted an exhibition of this sort. This was my artistic response. I needed to provide a place to honour other people's responses and help people see things in a new light. So as I mentioned, I'd been designing a brochure when the fires came through. Not doing something I loved, but something that paid the bills. I realised overnight that that had to change. So for the next few years or so, I actively worked towards becoming an artist. It became the most important thing in my life, a bit like the Resurrected exhibition. It became my utmost focus. But unlike the decision to become an artist, actually becoming an artist doesn't just happen overnight. It's taken me 6 years to fully allow myself to be an artist, let alone call myself an artist. And let me tell you, it doesn't pay as well as graphic design, but it's far more rewarding. And I feel like I'm making a difference, one little artwork at a time, and I feel whole. Soon after we opened the Resurrected exhibition, I started to panic. I started to worry about where all my memories would go if they weren't being triggered by the things I used to have in my house. Would my history just be forgotten because I didn't have the things there to jog my memory? The most important thing to me that we lost was my great auntie's piano. As I said, it had been left to me in her will when I was only 3 years old. And so it was a family heirloom. So I never really felt that I owned it. And I knew my family would think I was a bit silly if I actually said to them that I was sorry for losing it. So instead I made a sculpture out of it and fashioned the word sorry out of the burnt piano wires to apologise to my extended family for losing their heirloom. Thank you. But the piano also had past and future thoughts attached to it. It was as though when it went up in smoke, so did those past memories and future plans. Of course, I also lost my diaries and photos, words and pictures of my past. So I manically started writing down those memories that seemed to be attached to the things that I'd lost. As I lost my diaries in the fire, I realised I needed a safe place for these new words. I wrote them on my computer so that I could save them onto the internet, and then printed them onto strips of paper and wove them into nests, a symbol of home, but made strong with barbed wire, a reminder that home isn't always that safe. After weaving them into shape, I placed leftover burnt bits and pieces into the nests. I know my memories are safe here, and they are certainly something I pack whenever it's a code red day. I learnt that memories are what connects us to objects, people and places. They ground us and make us feel like we belong, and they make us who we are. About a year after the fires, we tried to get our business back on track. We started running workshops again from 3 stories. One in particular caught my eye because I decided I wanted to learn to paint. I was going to be an artist. It was a landscape painting workshop. Little did I know how profound this would be for me. We went out into the landscape around Long Gully Road, sat down to sketch. All the other people were frantically drawing the landscape. Some of it was bushy, some burned, some was already regenerating. The landscape was just doing what it does after a fire, totally accepting what had happened to it. But all I could do was question. I questioned what made up the landscape, what was under the layers of soot and soil, what other weather events had made the hill in front of me, and what lay behind the hills. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there and wonder. So I started writing down all the questions that were buzzing around my head. Then, of course, we went back to the studio to use our sketches as reference. I had no idea what I was going to do. So all I had were these words, and this was a painting workshop. So I decided to just write down the words on the canvas. Once I'd finished, I decided to pour shellac over the canvas. Obviously, I hadn't used the right ink because the shellac washed most of the words away. Almost a day's work had just been erased. I panicked for a few minutes, and then it struck me. Just as the landscape had accepted what had happened to it a year ago, I had to accept what had just happened. And in that second, I realised that, like the environment had, we just have to accept what happens. And this was a huge lesson to learn. And I learned it through art. What a gift. Nearly 5 years later, I was asked to build a bushfire memorial seat to be put in Queen's Park in Healesville to mark the 5-year anniversary of Black Saturday. This was such an incredibly sensitive project and an enormous responsibility. If you haven't seen it, the seat is semicircular shaped and includes verbatim words that have been donated by the community, and also words that had stayed with me since the Resurrected exhibition. Everyone remembers Black Saturday, but they remember it differently. So when asking people to donate a memory to be placed in the sculptural seat, I decided to give them two choices. To finish the sentence, I remember, or I never want to forget. This gave people a choice to choose a memory that they actually chose to remember, rather than one that chose them. People offered me their intimate and sometimes painful memories of how they experienced Black Saturday and how it felt to be surrounded by fire for 3 weeks. It's their courage that makes this seat such a powerful piece. When I was first asked to create this memorial, I was pleased that Healesville would have something that symbolised our experiences of the 2009 bushfires. Because although most of Healesville was not physically impacted upon by fires, we were certainly emotionally impacted, traumatised, and forever changed because of those fires. This reflective sculptural seat is a recognition of that. Today, I continue making artworks that are informed by the fires, because my life is. I make memories, not money. I value life, not stuff. My artworks reflect this, are informed by this, and they're about this. I make images designed to share with people what I've learned without them having to go through what we all went through. And to elicit worth and value onto the important things in life. Memories, the environment, values. Trying to gently coerce people into understanding what's important to them and helping them to make the most of their lives by connecting with them on an emotional level. All the artworks I've spoken about are exhibited in the gallery, apart from the seat, of course.
Downstairs, I was going to mention.
Downstairs, yeah. And it includes one of my most recent pieces called Still Vulnerable, which asks people to find the tipping point of a vessel filled with salt, which is actually an upturned souvenir snow dome. We have the power in our hands to change things, to look after things, and to choose what we value in our lives. So I invite you all to find your tipping points and discover what's truly valuable to you.